say it's the back pedal. Oh, I really didn't mean it like that, because Bernie's really a good guy and he's touching a chord with the country. Give me a break. Claire McCaskill ought to spend more time on what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri, than she should on what's going on in national politics. Senator Houston, we have a problem. But the Clinton loyalists are out and about trying to figure out exactly what is happening with the Clinton campaign. By the way, the demise of Rush Limbaugh, what is happening there? We're going to touch on that coming up here in just a bit with Holland Cook Media Consultant. It's interesting how many stations are dumping Rush Limbaugh around the country based on what happened 3 years ago. We'll get to it in a moment. I want to play a sound cut from back in June when the infancy of the Bernie Sanders campaign was just starting to evolve into something that, gosh, we better watch this. And Claire McCaskill said something on one of the cables, the senator from Missouri. She's a Clinton loyalist. She said that Senator Sanders is a socialist and was getting a pass from the media. Let me remind the senator from Missouri that Bernie Sanders is the only national candidate that did not have live coverage of his official announcement in Burlington, Vermont. That's right. I was there. We were going to do it. They pulled the plug on it. We had to cover something else. None of the other networks covered Bernie Sanders' official announcement that he's seeking the nomination when he had the lake as the backdrop and the beautiful mountainous scenery of Vermont and several thousand people there in Burlington supporting him. Gave a heck of a speech, but of course nobody saw it live. I think maybe C-SPAN had it. I'm not sure. So this idea that Bernie Sanders is getting a pass is bullshit. And this idea that he's a socialist isn't flying with the millennials, because identity politics is dead in this election cycle. I've said it time and time again. I'll continue to say it. Where are you on the issues, and where do you want to take the country? The fact that Trump is doing as well as he is shows that Republicans are issue-oriented. At least there's a core of them that want to make sure that things get handled. Most recent polling out in Iowa shows that he's more equipped to handle the dysfunction in Washington than anybody else, and that's one of the reasons why he's leading the poll in Iowa. We'll get to that. But this is back in June. This is Claire McCaskill, I think, discrediting Bernie Sanders.
The media is giving Bernie a pass right now. I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist. Well, Rand Paul's father got massive crowds, Ron Paul. Mm-hmm. He got the same size crowds. Pat Buchanan got massive crowds. It's not unusual for someone who has...
No. None of them got 27,000 people. None of them got 20,000 people. Claire McCaskill should correct herself in a big way before she makes a fool of herself, okay? As if Missouri doesn't have enough problems. The bottom line is this is how the Clinton loyalists play the game. They'll just say it out there, and because they're Clinton supporters and the Clinton machine is out there, it's going to be picked up and not challenged. Those comments by Claire McCaskill were not challenged at the time. So now the polls are out in New Hampshire, and here comes Claire McCaskill saying, oh, Bernie's touching a chord. Here it is.
I mean this sincerely. I think what he's doing, he's touching a chord, and I get the chord he's touching, and it's an important conversation we need to have.
Wait a second here. Hold on. Where's the socialist label, Senator? Now, is this a socialist chord that he's touching? Or is this a populist chord? What kind of chord are we talking about here? So we've gone from a comment in June to a comment in August, almost 2 months later. Holy smokes, we got a different Bernie out there, apparently, according to who she says is very sincere about this, Claire McCaskill. Play the thing again.
I mean this sincerely. I think what he's doing, he's touching a chord, and I get the chord he's touching, and it's an important conversation we need to have. In the long run, I think it's going to be very good for our country and good for our party. I do believe that Hillary Clinton will be the nominee, and she'll be elected, and I hope that she is. But I certainly respect what Bernie's doing and how he's doing it.
Okay.
Wow,
and how he's doing it. Well, how is he doing it? You know, I think that this is a microcosm of how a lot of these Democratic senators are feeling right now after they came out and said, oh, Hillary, we're supporting Hillary. Hold the phone. This is so early in the process, and this just underscores that just because they're sitting in the United States Senate doesn't mean they know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to politics and reading where the people are. This is a classic of how someone's going home on vacation, supposedly working with the people, trying to explain what the hell is going on in the Democratic Party. And I'll tell you exactly what's going on in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is talking to the people. Hillary isn't talking to anybody. And if you think the Clinton campaign doesn't have problems right now, you better think again. You have got the Inspector General of the State Department saying now that they will follow the facts wherever they lead. That's like telling a black lab that won't give up a steak bone, I'm going to suck on this and chew on this until I don't want to do it anymore, and you're not going to get it from me. I mean, this is dangerous stuff when you've got an Inspector General saying, we're going to follow the facts wherever they lead. When are they going to stop chasing the facts? Who knows? Now, Jennifer Palmieri is the communications director for the campaign for Hillary Clinton. She is a true professional, a good person, used to work over at the Center for American Progress. She puts out an email blast to all of the Clinton supporters yesterday saying that all this stuff about the emails and the FBI private server, email server being handed over, this is all nonsense and misinformation that the GOP is playing with. Okay, Hillary Clinton has been on record. This is back in March when she was talking about exactly how she handled her email in the two accounts.
I am confident that I never sent nor received any information that was classified at the time it was sent and received.
Well, if there's one email in there, that would make that comment wrong. That's the danger of all of this. And this plays right into the trustworthiness that is being thrown out there in just about every poll that's being taken on Hillary Clinton. So how are you kind of, I think this kind of goes beyond not liking the Clintons if you're in that camp. I think this kind of goes beyond thinking that you're a Bernie supporter. The conservatives are trying to mop up their camp and figure out what they're going to do with Trump. In the meantime, they're getting all this information on Hillary Clinton, which doesn't surprise them because they had a plethora of information to start with that they could work on 1,000 different angles because she's been in public life so long. But this is something new, and it's juicy. It's juicy when you have the State Department's Inspector General saying that we're going to follow the facts wherever they lead. Dan Holler is the communications director for Heritage Action for America, big conservative group. He joins us here on the Ed Schultz Internet broadcast, Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Dan, good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot. How are you?
Good, good. Give us the conservative take on the email issue that is facing the Clinton campaign and the candidate right now.
I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about everything that conservatives have said about the Clintons over the course of the past couple decades. And there's always been concerned about how they handled their personal affairs, how they intermix their personal affairs with their public life. And all of that seems to have been validated by the way that she's handled the email flap at the State Department and what was she doing, and more importantly, why and how she covered it up. So, I mean, if anything, I think this just reinforces all the concerns, obviously, that Republicans have about Hillary Clinton, but I think it's reinforcing a lot of the concerns that Democrats have about her as well.
Do you like the fact that this story, and let's face it, is probably going to take some of the glitter off of Trump and some of the issues that the Republicans may be having with him right now? What about that?
Yeah, I am hard-pressed to believe that the news media is not going to cover Donald Trump. I mean, I hope that some of this stuff that's going on with Hillary and the emails gets the right type of coverage. More importantly, from a conservative standpoint, I want to see the Republicans use this as an opportunity to explain why they should be trusted going forward. And it's not just that Hillary Clinton is untrustworthy. She is. But Republicans need to take that and say, she's untrustworthy, and here's how we're better, and here's how we're going to make your lives better. And that's what they need to do moving forward.
Okay, so the State Department Inspector General saying he's going to go follow the facts wherever they lead. It's almost like where there's smoke, there's fire. What do you think the end game here? How much of a problem is this going to be for her campaign? They dismiss the GOP attacks and the criticism as nonsense and misinformation. Your reaction?
I mean, it's a huge problem for him, and it's only going to get worse. Even if somehow she goes through this entire process and she's cleared of any wrongdoing, nobody has any faith in the federal government, especially Barack Obama's administration, to conduct these things with sort of the integrity that you would expect. So I think it's a lose-lose situation for her. They either find something damning on her, and it makes her sort of trustworthiness go even lower. It gives more room for Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or whoever to jump in. Or she's cleared, and people say, well, of course they're cleared. It's a Democrat frontrunner. Of course they're going to cover her tracks.
What is the Heritage Foundation, the Heritage Action for America's stance on Donald Trump? Do you think he is a positive for the party, and how would you handle it if he got the nomination? I mean, clearly he's been through some controversial news stuff, but it hasn't chipped away at him in the polls at all. He's still a very strong leader in all of this. And he just doesn't back down. Where does Heritage come down on Trump?
I mean, I think if you look at Trump, there's a lot of concern surrounding the policies he's supported in the past. But the reason people are gravitating towards him right now is because he is throwing all the rules out of the window. He's throwing under the bus all these politicians who people are sick and tired of. So, I mean, he is really a symptom of the problem. And it's the same reason that Bernie Sanders has a ton of traction in the Democrat primary, is that voters are looking for somebody who appears to be authentic, who is not the standard politician.
What do you think's going to happen with Bush? Bush got a lot of money, but he didn't have a very good debate, and he just seems to be wallpaper right now. And it doesn't seem like actually any of the candidates are figuring out how to get traction on issues with Trump sucking up all the air in the room, it seems like. He outmaneuvers them. His media moxie is just completely unparalleled to the rest of the candidates. But the guy that's really being left in the dust is Bush. For instance, in the most recent Iowa poll, he's at 5%. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the interesting thing to watch, is that there's been the assumption that Trump is stealing votes from conservative candidates. If you look sort of at the top level and you look at the average of all the polls, Trump's rise really coincides with two things happening. One is a slight uptick for Scott Walker, and that's since gone away. But the other was a downgrade for Bush. And you have, I think, voters looking at Donald Trump and saying, he has put his finger on the pulse of everything that's wrong with our current system. Not that he is the solution, but he has identified a problem. And then they're looking at politicians and saying, are they part of the problem, or can I see them as the solution? And the challenge for Jeb Bush is to go out and say, I was a conservative governor. I did great things in that state, and I'll be able to do that at the federal level too. And he has a trust gap there, given his time after office and sort of the Bush legacy name. It's something he's capable of doing, but it's going to take more than just one debate or a couple good debates moving forward to make that happen.
Trump was the best candidate equipped to handle terrorism, the economy, and illegal immigration. 44% said Trump was the candidate to most likely change, quote, the way things work in Washington. That just tells me that he's in this for the long haul. And I think one of the things that is attractive to conservatives and supporters of Trump is that he's his own man. Nobody owns him. What's your response to that?
Well, I think you would probably find a very similar attitude amongst Bernie Sanders supporters. Bernie Sanders is the one who would go to Washington or go to the White House. He's already in Washington. Go there and actually change the way things work. Now, I wouldn't like the way Bernie Sanders changes things. I probably wouldn't like the way Donald Trump changes a lot of things. But people are so dissatisfied with what's happening in Washington right now that they are looking for somebody who will go out and say, I am willing to shake things up. And that's what they're latching on to right now. And the challenge for Hillary Clinton and the challenge for the Republican candidates is to show that they're capable of doing that.
Dan Holler, final point. What is the Heritage Foundation's number one issue with Trump? What's the biggest bone you pick with him?
I mean, right now there's no real substance in terms of policy, and that's what we want to see moving forward is, what will he put forward as a comprehensive policy agenda? Because the rhetoric is right, he's identified the problems, but what are the policy solutions that he's going to put forward, and are they things that will actually work and appeal to conservatives.
Okay. Dan Holler, good to visit. We'll do it again. Thanks so much. Communication Director for Heritage Action for America here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, of the iSave team bring you this production. Now this. Hey folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, President of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Good to have you back with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Got my first speaking gig. Going to be October 1st in Youngstown, Ohio. AFL-CIO. Looking forward to that. By the way, I should also point out that I have been in contact with Senator Sanders, and I have told him that if he wants me to do something, I will. So I'm not an official spokesperson. I'm a Bernie guy, and I've been pretty clear about that on this production day after day. And I got a feeling I'm probably going to be introducing him in a few places, which I have the freedom to do, and I'm looking forward to doing that. You know, in this industry, there's always the real story. What's the real story? Oftentimes, it doesn't get told. Oftentimes, it's speculated upon. This is a story that is now into its fourth year. It all started back in March of 2012 when the Republicans in this country were trying to repeal Obamacare. And it was a run-up to the election trying to discredit the president and sell the country on the fact that Obamacare has no chance of being successful. Now, this week, 15 million people, as put out by the administration, are now being covered by the Affordable Care Act. But in the midst of all of this, there was a tremendous amount of testimony on Capitol Hill. And what was Obamacare going to actually cover? And what was being challenged as these constant votes took place in the House to repeal Obamacare? So they decided to have a hearing on Capitol Hill in front of the House committee hearings. And they were going to talk about contraception. And so they had the Republicans orchestrated an all-male panel to talk about contraception. And, of course, the Democrats wanted to bring forth a law student, a 3-year law student from Georgetown University, and you remember Sandra Fluck. And you may remember this soundbite, which started this now into its fourth year, this running story that's had a brutal effect on the spoken word format in this country.
What does it say about the college co-ed Susan Fluke? who goes before a congressional committee and essentially says that she must be paid to have sex. What does that make her? It makes her a slut, right?
Little did we know that word would carry and reverberate throughout the industry, and a lot of people would lose their jobs and a lot of format changes would take place. But Limbaugh refused to back down the very next day as this tirade against this Georgetown law student continued for 3 days nonstop on the radio.
If we're going to have to pay for this, then we want something in return, Ms. Fluke, and that would be the videos of all this sex posted online so we can see what we are getting for our money.
I guess that's the entertainment conservatives really wanted back then. Or was it? It certainly isn't the entertainment that WRKO or WIBC and some other big stations across the country wanted to hear, because they have dumped Rush Limbaugh. The very industry that he helped and propped up is now pushing back against him, to the point where, when you hear the real story when someone leaves, you normally don't get the real story. You don't get the real facts. You get speculation. But you know what? We're getting a lot of facts right now, and a lot of people in the industry speaking out as to why they're dumping Limbaugh. Now, you can't argue with the guy's bank account. You can't argue with his success. Is it style? Is it bad business? Is it content? Or is it the spoken word now in trouble in formats across the country in talk radio? The kingmaker is no longer the kingmaker for the Republicans. California's QwbeAC has dropped Limbaugh. And what is interesting about this is one of the original stations. And in the press release, they absolutely hammer the guy. The release elaborated on the economic reasons. And now the free market has spoken. Rush has repelled local, regional, and national advertisers from QwbeAC, costing stations thousands of dollars in advertisers. It goes on to say that advertisers would rather just avoid the whole station than take the risk of being associated with Rush Limbaugh's increasingly toxic brand. Is it Limbaugh? Is it content? Is it the wave of the industry? Holland Cook can give us some insight. Media consultant and great friend of mine. You can find him at hollandcook.com and survivalspeech.com. Holland, great to have you with us.
Ed, it's great to be here, and I really enjoy your new video podcast. Very cool. I assume you're getting out on the lake a little more often now that you don't have to be sitting on TV every afternoon. So I'm fleeing with envy.
We don't have to tell all the secrets behind the camera, do we?
Yeah, I think it's two of the three issues above. Is it Limbaugh and is it the topic? And in terms of the tone, it's very interesting to listen to that Sandra Fluke stuff now almost 4 years later, because as this weekend dust-up with Donald Trump and Megyn Kelly was unfolding, I tweeted out, will Megyn Kelly be to Donald Trump what Sandra Fluke was to Rush Limbaugh? And I think we already see that she won't. Trump's poll numbers are just on fire. People seem to hear this guy. Who knows what'll come of it? If he's got a solid 20%, that's just enough to sink the Republicans' hopes, because you need 40. But when you listen back to that Limbaugh stuff, it sounds even more offensive now than it did at the time, and we've seen what it's done to his business. National advertisers have left literally by the thousands, and a relentless boycott effort will just show up in the email and on the phone if you're a local advertiser whose commercial shows up in his show on a local station. So like you, I was surprised to read such plain-spoken explanation from the station manager at QwbeAC.
Yeah.
Usually it's gracious. Full disclosure, you mentioned WRKO in Boston, which is my client, and we did recently drop Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. And put local programming on in those hours, and we wished him the best in the customary press release. But when you read what the station manager there in California said, it really does explain the problem. Advertisers don't want to be in the show. Station sales reps don't want to sell the show. And I got to tell you, the smartest career move Rush Limbaugh ever made was having his present deal expire in 2016 because it forces Premier Radio Networks, his syndicator, back to the negotiating table before a presidential election that they figure they can't do without him, and yet they can't afford him already. So that's going to be a tough negotiation.
Well, there's a couple of interesting angles here. Number one, when I read this press release from the station manager, Steve Harness, who was quoted in this, it was almost as if he was trying to save the format. It was almost as if, look, this guy's bad, he's toxic, but we're okay, and we just got to keep moving. I mean, that was the inside baseball feeling that I got when I read that. Normally it's, we're going in a different direction, we're going to make programming changes, we want to try something else. It's been a great run, blah, blah, blah. None of that. I mean, it was deep sixing the guy in a big way in explaining verbatim as to how damaging Limbaugh has been to the format, and which is rather unusual. It was not the standard press release as what you have described from WRKO in Boston. So where does this leave the spoken word format? Is it strong as it ever has? It's just we're getting a different kingmaker, so to speak.
Well, this Rush Limbaugh template, meaning I talk, you listen, Democrats bad, Republicans good, I'm right, you're wrong. The use-by date on this is probably going to be first quarter 2017, and I think it is being artificially propped up by the impending 2016 elections. Face it, it's a one-joke act. It's relentless politics, same thing day after day. But their one joke is about to be told, the election. This is a big game that they trained for. Otherwise, I think that the talk format may have evolved more by now than it already has. The demographics are very unkind to this, and you see the ratings. Rush Limbaugh is now small in big markets. He's still big in small markets, many of them. But in the big markets, this guy used to make a radio station. You would put the Rush Limbaugh show on your station, and he would make your station number one, to the extent that some of these early adopter stations, way up on the right-hand side of the dial, like QwbeAC, would have the show poached from them by the bigger station way down at the left end of the dial once Rush got hot. He actually moved to bigger stations because he was that big a deal in 1990. But, hey, how long can any act stay hot? And look at what's happening with the age wave. There were 77 million of us, baby boomers, and calendar year 2015 is when the 92 million millennials have actually taken control of the USA retail economy. Beginning this year, millennials are outspending their parents. And you know what we know about these earnest young people. They are not keen on confrontation, and they're thoughtful people, and they do want to save the earth, and they do have curiosity about different opinions, and they are a diverse culture, and they don't insult women, and they're all the things that the Rush Limbaugh narrative is not. So there was this whole generation of Me Too local hosts and syndicated national acts that were aping Limbaugh's act, who, frankly, are all mature. And I think what you're going to see now and hear on radio is stations trying things. The local show we have in Boston that displaced Rush Limbaugh, we moved there from mornings. And in the morning, we're co-venturing a new morning show with the Boston Globe's radio site, boston.com, and we've hired a familiar TV anchor, and her co-host is a sports guy in the market, and we got a sharp young producer, and politically they're on the 50-yard line because people have just been bludgeoned with this political narrative for so long. And, the angry old men will always find Rush Limbaugh the same place they find Fox News, but it just got old.
Holland, I think that the sweet spot of what we're seeing politically in this country, it's not about identity politics. It's not about personalities or anybody's past. Where are you on the issue? I think that the demographic that you're describing is hungry for answers on issues that affect them. We used to call them the kitchen table issues. And I don't know what we call them now, but the fact is, where do you stand on trade? Where do you stand on Keystone? Where do you stand on climate? Where do you stand on corporations parking their money offshore? Do you think that's fair, this fairness that has come into play? How far do you want to go with health care? Do you really think that you should have to pay to go to college in this country? And should everybody get ahead? And what about affirmative action? These are all issues, left, right, blue, green, center. And I think that this has given us a totally different flavor of what's unfolding in front of our eyes politically in this country, which has made the us versus them talk radio scenario obsolete.
Yeah, young people don't want to argue about things. And I've done focus groups with millennials recently for a couple of the state broadcasters associations, and these people want to fix things.
Yeah.
They are thoughtful young people, misunderstood as slackers. That term may have applied more to Generation X, but these folks are engaging each other in dialogue and concerned about the ecology and all of that. And something else we've seen accelerated by this whole Sandra Fluke faux pas is the explosion of talk radio in sports.
Yeah.
Sports talk radio has never been hotter. You got somebody paying $2 billion for a last-place NBA team. The sports leagues have all discovered digital distribution, and now you can get baseball games on your phone, and there are whole new revenue streams there. So as money was fleeing controversial programming that was tainted by what Limbaugh did, a lot of it has moved into sports talk radio, and sports is hot now.
Has the attention span of the American people changed because of iPhones and because of the revolution that we're seeing unfold in front of our eyes when it comes to the techie information world? Has that affected our attention span?
The bar has never been set higher for relevance, but with all of this new platform stuff, something interesting has happened. Total media consumption has grown. The slices of the pie are a little thinner now, but the whole pie itself is actually bigger. We're reading and listening to and watching more stuff as we have more means to and as more stuff is available. The weekend that they dump a whole new series like Orange is the New Black, you call all your friends and you get voicemail because they're binge watching.
Sure.
And, we have an on-demand society. Look at the way people now consume your show on any device they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. So for now, the pie has grown, but the bar has never been set higher for relevance. And when you turn on a show on the radio, and it sounds like the same show you heard yesterday, and somebody's getting scolded, you don't really feel as though you're going to miss something if you miss a day.
Yeah. Holland Cook, media consultant and great friend of ours. Final comment. Why is Donald Trump not being hurt by the dust-up he's had with Fox News? And what do you make of his presence in this Republican field?
Well, people sure hear this guy. And in the same way they hear Bernie Sanders, these guys don't talk, quote, like politicians talk.
They're not owned by anybody.
Yep, they're not owned by anybody. Well, consider the irony. Look at all this dough that Jeb Bush has raised. What was it, $114 million on
He's
the
wallpaper. Yeah.
And what if this was the election cycle when the guy with the most money didn't automatically win? This has always been the mother's milk. You got to have a ground team in place. You got to buy a lot of TV commercials. What if Donald Trump, ironically the richest guy in the race, didn't even have to spend his money because of all the earned media he gets every time he opens his mouth? It's a great show, and bear in mind, it is a show, but as the Donald himself said, you don't think 24 million people tuned into that debate to see Jeb Bush, do you?
Now, he has a media moxie about him that is unparalleled to the rest of the candidates.
Sure does.
He understands what plays. He understands what gets picked up. He understands what's going to be repeated. And he understands how to gather the attention of media people. It's an uncanny ability he has. And I don't know if anybody's going to be able to break through it, because at the end of the day, he's a conservative, and he's going to be just as conservative as anybody else. He's a Wall Streeter.
Well, he's got Roger Ailes calling him to kiss and make up. And I watched that press conference he did last night in Michigan, and it's uncanny how he controls the dialogue. He'll call on a reporter. The reporter will ask a probing question. He'll give him a snappy answer and then turn to someone else. Nobody pins him down on anything, and the guy speaks in bumper sticker length sound bites.
And here is the sound bite you're talking about. At the event in Michigan on Tuesday, Donald Trump says this about Bush, Hillary Clinton, Rand Paul, and, of course, the guy who's not showing anything in the polls, and that's Lindsey Graham.
Jeb Bush or Hillary or one of these politicians, all talk, no action. We need energy. We need tone, tone. Now it's Rand Paul. Do you believe it? He's the new one. I said, Rand, I've had you up to here. I've had you up to here. Lindsey Graham is at zero. Legitimately, I saw it on television. Zero. These stiffs, these politicians, they're stiffs.
There is that straight talk that is appealing.
Yeah, utterly unfiltered, unedited. You know the word he uses against Jeb Bush that really seems to resonate? He keeps calling him weak. He's weak.
Yeah.
And and if you want to join the Donald Trump drinking game, knock back a shot every time he says disaster. You'll be hammered in no time, but everything's a disaster. And people hear that. I think this is going to be like the Watergate class of 74, where incumbents got turned out in droves because we were angry about Richard Nixon, and it was the biggest Democratic wave anybody could remember. This could be another anti-incumbent wave where incumbents of either party may be endangered because of the plain talk we're hearing from Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. It cuts through the clutter.
And what's interesting, as we close this segment, it appears that Donald Trump doesn't need the former kingmaker, Rush Limbaugh.
How about that? And before we go, a word about President Jimmy Carter. We're really sad to hear today about his cancer having spread. Here's a guy who never lied to us, never fired a shot, and helped poor people build housing. God bless Jimmy Carter.
Yeah. Holland, great to have you with us, and thank you for that comment. It is so apropos and so spot on. Thanks so much.
Pal. Hugs.
All right.
Wendy.
You bet. Media consultant Holland Cook with us here on the Ed Schultz Internet broadcast. Ed Schultz News and Commentary available to this website, wegoted.com, rawstory.com, and ringofireradio.com. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this production. We're back tomorrow.